Welcome to Emergence 2020, our October 31st session. And I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, the Tsleil-Waututh, the Squamish, and the Musqueam nations. And taking time as well, especially during this global period of unprecedented awareness and hopefully growing awareness and inclusion of all our cultural histories and lived experiences of all the people of color everywhere. I'd like to thank our sponsors, grateful for the support of Creative BC and the province of British Columbia, and our host organization, the Red Chamber Cultural Society. I'm Catherine Lee. I am the host of the session. I'm the treasurer on the board of the Red Chamber Cultural Society. And in my work life, I'm involved in capacity building and creative consulting. Today's topic is getting that sound, the art of recording. And we're pleased to welcome guest mentor Noreen Braun, along with returning mentors May Han and Crystal Dos Santos. Need a reminder, it's a discussion on how to record, whether you're recording at home or in the studio, getting that sound that you want. Recording is an important art to learn, and there are a number of steps that can assist you to sound the way you want to. Noreen Braun is emotional, heartfelt, and eclectic. That's her in 3 words. She's a Vancouver-based singer-songwriter, an award-winning artist who has a large number of albums and a slew of festival appearances under her belt. Her music blinks an eye to the past while firmly looking forward, blending timeless elements such as blues, folk, and soul, presenting them to the audience with a freshness and balance that are in tune with today's sensibilities. Noreen's eclectic approach to songwriting and her prowess as a heartfelt performer are the fundamentals of her solid reputation within her local scene and beyond. Noreen is about to release her 12th studio album on December 4th. We're so pleased to welcome you, Noreen. Welcome to the group.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a great honor to be a mentor among my esteemed colleagues and to meet all of you here today, all of the emerging artists, and sharing with you what I know about recording. I thought I would start today on talking about my evolution of a recording artist. I thought that would be sort of the best way to go about it, so you can get a sense of where I've come from and where I am now. As Kat mentioned, I have released, it'll be my 12th album coming up December. I release in a variety of genres, but primarily I'm a roots rock, blues, a little bit of jazz artist. I got started in the early 90s doing demos. I was more a songwriter. I was more approaching the world of music as a songwriter. So I started doing demos. I worked with a couple of young guys who had some studio time. So when I was first doing it, my partner has an ARCT, so she would chart my music for me, and we'd go into the studio and they would record it, how it was charted and how I liked it, and I would go and do the vocals. And so I evolved from that. I wanted to have more of a hands-on experience, and I met a fellow by the name of James Bowers. He used to advertise a lot on Common Ground. It was the one cat that does it all. He was a songwriter's dream. He was multi-instrumentalist, and I thought that would be a perfect fit. So I met him, and he was quite an amazing guy. He's also a recording engineer, and he had a nice studio in his home, and I started to work with him. And so he pretty much did all the instrumentation for my arrangements for my songs. And the nice thing about him is he didn't need charts, because I play by ear. I'm not a trained musician. I'm self-taught. So that was perfect. We could just sit together. I could play him the songs. We could talk about it and sit down and decide how the vision we'd have for the albums and the process we were going to take. And so that was a really great relationship to work with one person, and a really easy relationship, because he did so many things for me. And he ended up becoming a mentor. He helped me grow a great deal as a musician and understand how recording works. And so we went on and we did 4 albums together in the studio. And then I went on and I produced another album by myself with my band. I had a band called Noreen Braun and the Mood Swings. It was kind of a blues roots sound. And I produced that. It was a live recording. We did it in the studio and people could watch. It was sort of the early day before there was Facebook Live. We streamed it from the recording studio, and then Jamie, he mixed and mastered that. So we had a long relationship. We worked together for about 10 years. I think we recorded about 70 songs together. So I had a real great experience working with Jamie, and he grew as well, and he decided to give up production for a while. He was getting into photography. So that set me on a journey to find new people to work with, which was really good. I met some amazing producers in Vancouver. I worked with Alan Rogers. He produced a song, Crystallized, that won female singer-songwriter of the year in the jazz category at LA Music Awards. And he did some other kind of funky R&B stuff with me too. His style was quite different in production and recording. Is we would sit down, we'd talk, and then I would go, and then I would come back and he would have everything done for me. So he liked to work with songwriters who didn't really want to be part of that process, who would just sort of sit down and you'd say, I like this style of a song. This is the genre. We'd sit down, we'd get a groove and a feel, and then he'd go away. So that was good. And he's a wonderful producer. But for me, after working with Jamie, I realized that I wanted to be in the recording process every step of the way. I wanted to be there in pre-production. I wanted to be there when we're laying down the bass and laying down the drums, laying down everything. I wanted to be part of that experience, part of the arrangement. So after I worked with Alan and with some other producers, I thought I needed to find someone who, similar to Jamie, who wanted to work together like that. So fortunate for me, Jamie mentioned Adam Popowitz. And I met Adam, I guess, in 2009. And I've been working with him. He produced my last 5 albums. And very similar to Jamie, we work together and I'm with him every step of the way. So how that process works for me now, I can sort of give you a detail, is I have a body of work that I want to record, and then I call him up and I say, I have these songs ready to go. And I have an album. I have a sort of a concept or a vision of what I'd like to do. And so, we talk about it on the phone or on email, and I send him over some songs that I've recorded just on like GarageBand, really basic, just a vocal and a guitar. And then he listens to them, and then he gets back to me about what he thinks. And then usually we get together, he comes over, and then I play for him live in my living room. And then we sort of look at keys. Because when you write something as a songwriter, is quite different, or at least for me, it's quite different than how you might actually sing it as a singer. So sometimes the songs are coming in a certain way, but for me as a singer, maybe a different feel, a different key would be better. And so that's when we'd sort of start to mesh that out, is just sitting together in the living room, playing it live. And then we talk about it more, about the vision for the song. And then once we've done that, we set up sort of like a pre-production meeting where I'll send him, for each song that I send him, I will send him a treatment of, I like this sound. This is a song that I'd like you to match in terms of engineering, or maybe the drum or the feel or the vocal. And so I'd have that unlinked for each of those songs. And so then he gets a better sense of my vision and what it is that I'd like. And then after he has those, he sits with them for a while, and then I go to his studio, and we will sit together and further develop the arrangement. So we'll do scratch tracks where I'll do a vocal and my guitar, but we'll find an actual drum programming so we can get a tighter sense of how is the rhythm going to be, what's the groove, how long is the song. And so each song will have these scratch tracks with the vocals, guitar, and a drum program. And then once that's set, we move into an actual recording. The recording sessions are set up now. So the drummer and the bass is usually Adam. He does lead guitar and bass. So him and Elliot Polsky, who's my percussionist, they sit together and they are usually recorded simultaneously. So because you really want your rhythm section to really mesh. So the drums and the bass are recorded at the same time, and they're playing along to the scratch tracks. And I'm in the room listening, and we're, when they're finished a few takes, we sort of decide on how we're going to go. And usually we leave a lot that up to the drummer. That's his talent. So how he's hearing it, how he's feeling the song, you want it to have space. And so the drummer, he'll give his feel to it. He'll give his little talent there that he has. And so we let him do his magic. Same with the bass. They come together to play that. So we do it. So we make, that's what we call the foundation. And so once that foundation is laid, then we'll move into the other instruments. Usually it's rhythm guitar, which is what I usually play. And then we'll do lead guitar and then keys. So we do it piece by piece. And then if we had a sax player on the last one, a blues harp player. So we do all of those layers one by one. And then I'll come in at the end and I'll do the vocals and then harmony vocals. This last one, I did some of the harmonies. My partner did some of the harmonies. And so it's very much a process. So if you're wanting to do recordings, it's really, you want to really enjoy process work. You have a vision, you have a plan, but how it ends up may be a little bit different, and because you want to allow for things to evolve and grow and have magic happen too, because sometimes you have happy accidents and things happen, or things will pop up that you could never have imagined happening until you're actually in the recording process. So that's sort of how it works. And then after you've done that, you're happy with your takes. Usually Adam works with, he likes to get 3 takes of each instrument. So you want to be really prepared when you're in the recording studio. You want to have everything ready. You don't want to still be learning your song. You kind of want to know that you can just record. So like for vocals, he usually does 3 takes, sometimes more if I'm having a struggle with something, but generally he likes to do 3 takes and then move on. Because usually you should know your song well enough that you can do it in 3 takes, ideally just for time, because you don't want to just be wasting time. So that's another thing to know, is to be ready when you're recording. And that's why it really kind of flows for us, because everybody comes, everybody's ready to do their part. So yeah, it's really process oriented. Once we're done that and we've got all the right takes, then we edit. And so every instrument's edited so that it's, it's as good as possible. Most producers don't like to do like note for note. They just want to do a take. Like if you're doing a vocal, they'll take a line, maybe the second take you took it was better, so they might do some editing that way so that you can get the best flow of each performance. And same with drums, maybe something needs to be tightened up a little bit and maybe it's not right on, but those things are done before you mix. So you'll do editing and maybe 2 or 3 days of all of the instrumentation, and then you mix. And mix is sort of a placement of what do you want forward, what do you want back, what do you want in each side of your headphones, in terms of what instrument do you want to be forefront. Usually the vocals is a little bit forward, but not always, depending on how you. When I work with Jamie, he likes to sort of have everybody the same. Adam likes to have vocals a little bit forward, and so I like vocals a bit forward myself. And then once you do a couple of mixes and see where it feels best, and then you do the final, which is called mastering. And mastering is really important, especially, depending on your project and what you're recording for. If you're recording for radio, you really have to have a professional mastering done. Otherwise, radio won't even listen. It has to go there because they can't be adjusting sound. They have to make sure that whatever they get is going to be whatever they get from everybody. So if your levels are not right, and if they just won't play you. So you have to make sure that mastering levels are done to a professional industry standard if you are interested in sending it to radio. So that's an important thing to know. So whoever is doing your mastering, make sure that they know what the industry standard is, so that you're confident when you're sending it out. You don't want to put all your work into it and find out, oh no, they're not going to play this because it's not where it's supposed to be. So. But mastering also makes everything polished and even. It brings out all the nice parts of the voice and the instruments. So that's sort of what I do, or what I've done, sort of a quick of the past 25 years of recording. Yeah. So
That's
yeah, if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to to fill you in more.
So next I'd like to introduce Dr. Mei Han, who is a rare blend of performer and scholar specializing in the Chinese zheng, the zither, the parent instrument of the Asian long zither family. Recognized internationally as an authority and virtuoso on the zheng, Mei's career spans Asia, Africa, Europe, and North America. Mei presents music deeply rooted in over 2,000 years of Chinese culture, with traditional and groundbreaking contemporary works that demonstrate the zheng as a serious instrument of expression for the international concert stage. Mei is the leader of the internationally touring ensemble Red Chamber. Mei is the founding director of the Center for Chinese Music and Culture at Middle Tennessee State University. And thank you, Mei, for your organization's hosting of this event, and welcome back.
Good morning from Middle Tennessee. It's a sunny day here, very nice, and glad to be back to see some familiar faces and some new faces. As Catherine introduced me, I am an instrumentalist. I was born, raised, and worked in China as a professional musician for about 20 years before I moved to Canada. So my experience with recording started in Canada. And I was a conservatory trained musician. Before I came to Canada, I didn't learn about improvisation. So most of my works are composed music. My group, Red Chamber, recorded 2 albums, but in total, I have recorded 8 albums. So for recording for me in the last 20 years, all this experience really made me think that recording it's an art form unto itself. No matter how experienced you are as a performing artist, and it is a different experience and different expectation when it comes to recording your artwork. And because it is crossroads for creativity to meet technology. And as a musician, that technology part can be very daunting. And I think as an instrumentalist, my recording experience is quite different from voice, from singers. One, for instance, the Red Chamber, this quartet of 4 Chinese pluck string instruments, they have to be very, very tight. You know, you pluck, it's like guitar, boom, that note, that's it. So if there is just a hair bit off, when you listen to that from your headphone, it's a complete terrifying feeling. It's different from performing on stage. So I want to talk a little bit about preparation. As Noreen also mentioned, you have to prepare first. That preparation includes both practically and also psychologically. And psychologically, you have to know that recording is different. When you're going into a recording studio, you're going to be nervous because the sound is different, the room is different, and the atmosphere, the energy is different. You don't have a live audience, and you're absolutely critical because everything, every single note seems blown up. Any mistake, it becomes so much bigger. So psychologically, you have to be prepared, knowing this is a documentation of your artwork, is where you are. And that moment is, you know, you try to capture the best moment of where you are, not where you want to be, or this is a perfect picture of your art form. Then that's it. And practically, you need to play a lot. If possible, the repertoire you could have already played on stage for a while before you recorded. That would be ideal. But I know for pop music, for songwritings, it's not necessarily the case. Usually you go to studio, big band is staying in studio for a long period of time. They create the pieces in studio. So that is quite different. It depends on what art form, what genre you're in. No matter what, practice a lot. If you can, you find somebody, a technician or a producer that you might want to work with and hire or have some opportunity to work with them beforehand to try things out in the rehearsal and worked out all the bugs and before you go into. So I'm just going to stop here and let Crystal to introduce herself. Then we can talk more about details. Thank you.
And Crystal, welcome back. Crystal Dos Santos
Thank you.
is an award-winning vocalist. She's known for her powerful voice and her infectious warmth. We know that, right? Crossing genres, she combines soul with jazz, pop, funk, and blues into her own unique expression while seamlessly moving between each style with total command. In addition to her music career, her developed sense of performance and stagecraft have launched her into a successful modeling and TV acting career. Whether as a solo artist, fronting a band, or being in front of the camera, Dos Santos exudes confidence, poise, and power. A dynamic performer, Crystal is always a step ahead of the crowd.
Let me just start by saying that recording has been some of the most tumultuous parts of my career. It has been both the most disastrous and the most incredibly successful. So if you are scared to record, you are so valid in feeling that feeling. And, to sort of echo what Noreen and May have said, preparation, 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 and the mental and the actual like musical preparation are huge. But to not be redundant and to not repeat what they said, I was making a couple of notes about the different things that kind of brought up for me. Session players versus your actual band, that's one thing. Like, let's say you want to record and you have a band, or maybe you're breaking off and you're doing your own solo thing, or maybe you don't have a band. Think about who you want to play with, and recognize not only in yourself that your preparedness is a big deal, but their preparedness is a big deal. So if you hire someone who's maybe a little more expensive than your buddy Jim, but this guy's been in the studio hundreds of times, know that he's going to get the take in the first 2-3 times. You know what I mean? So who you hire is a really good thing. One thing that we talked about in our preparation meeting last week was that these people are working for you. You're hiring them. You're hiring the studio, you're hiring the engineer, the producer, the band. Never feel like you're not the one in charge. And not in a, I'm the best kind of, I'm your boss kind of a way, but recognize that you are and you have the authority to A, speak up, B, get exactly what you want, because guess what? You're the one paying for it, whether it's through a grant, out of your own pocket, or anything else. Know your authority and use it as the launch pad to make sure that you're getting the exact product you want, because creative versus business has to work together, right? Mandy, you hear me? And it's just like so important to make sure that you know what you're looking for when you're going into the studio. So not only musical preparation or psychological preparation, but you have to know what your end product is that you know that you want to be getting. And Noreen kind of touched upon this in terms of being able to go back and forth with whoever you're working with, the producer specifically more so than anything, and say, I really want this sound. And if they say, here comes your authority again. If they say, oh, sorry, that's impossible, or no, we're not into that, then say, okay, I'm going to move on and find somebody who knows how to do this. Again, because you are the one in charge. I can't express enough how much that has come. And I have dozens of stories. I'm not going to waste your time, but where I've said, I really want like a bluesish album. And this guy was a jazz guy. He's like, nope, we're sticking to jazz. So 3 weeks of turmoil later, I made a phone call and he's like, you're never going to make it anywhere in this business. But I won an award with that album that, I ditched him and did what I want with. So get what you want, I think, is the point. Sorry, I'm going off script here. Not that I have a script. Hey, but another thing that we were talking about last week in our preparation meeting for this one is to visit the studio. Studios are expensive. They're $500 to $1,300 an hour. And they are a massive investment in your recording process. Of course, you're going to pay your musicians. Of course, you have to pay for mixing and mastering. Those are all, very necessary costs. But your studio is going to be the place where you feel at home for the number of days that you're going to be recording. And I highly recommend, I've never done this, but maybe somebody suggested that you just pay for a day rate and with a group of friends and go and ask the engineer to help you out, to just snoop around. What kind of mics you got? How does this make me sound? I've got a really soft folky voice, or I've got a really belty blues voice. What's going to be the best thing for me? Can you get this sound? I really want to sound like a retro Etta James record. I want to sound like, I don't know, Kygo mixing Etta James. Like you never know what it is that you want. Whatever it is that you want, is my point, is ask and you shall receive. Knowledge is power. Make sure you know what you're getting before you go and invest your thousands of dollars a day. And often, one day is, about a 10-hour time frame. One thing that I think is really important to do is make sure you're scheduling exactly what you want per day as well. So drums take forever. They take almost 3 hours to set up. Know that in a day when you're doing drums, almost a third of your day is going to be eaten up just by setup alone. And so I think by going to the studio and again gaining that knowledge, you're going to absolutely be able to allow yourself the actual planning process. In terms of pre-preparation beforehand, yes, rehearse your band, know exactly what you're doing, make the schedule for in the studio. That your producer should very much be able to help you do that. Miking also takes forever. Exactly. Miking of anything, your voice, your guitar, everything. And of course, very different elements. Like I was very blessed this last album to have strings that I've never had live strings, horns. I've had horns, but like this was on a whole different level. These are all very different elements that in a recording, if you're just doing a beautiful acoustic or a 4 or 5 piece rhythm section, these are very different elements to recording than just your basic guitar, bass, drums, piano. What does this mean for home recording? Thanks, Randy. So of course, now we live in a world where, of course we can still go in the studio and they are doing great jobs of being COVID friendly, but of course, home recording is a massive deal now. Personally, I'm looking at my little recording setup. Let me see if I can non-embarrassingly turn my camera around and show you what that looks like. Can you see that? I've got like a little, that's my backpack, but where's the lighting? If you can see that little sort of like, it's kind of a boothy thing. I think it cost 99 bucks. And then I've got a pop screen and a nice professional microphone. And my husband built the stand. So, it's unnecessary. You could do that all on a tabletop. So there's that like pop screen thing, or not the pop screen, sorry, the sound absorbency thing. And you can build yourself a little studio for $1,000 bucks. It's not going to be the best thing in the whole world, but you can also rent all of that stuff from Long and McQuaid for a whole lot less. And you can rent way better microphones like a Neumann or any of these other really amazing things for a lot less than you can buy them for, because some really good mics at home go for $5,000, $10,000. Some mics in studios are $50,000. You just want to get what's going to be decent for you at home. Find a program on your laptop that's going to work. I use Reaper. It is compatible with all of the other like Logic and all of these other ones. Like somehow the Reaper file is like an open program that is compatible with pretty much anything that anyone else uses. And it's such a simple thing to use. And they have tutorials on YouTube for absolutely everything. So check that out. You can also rent some. Yeah, Long and McQuaid has everything. So check out Long and McQuaid's recording. You can practice and just try it with whatever, rental stuff you want. It's so low risk and low cost, their rental stuff, that you can absolutely check everything out. And even if you were going to go into the studio and you're like, I wonder how I sound in this mic, you can go maybe and check it out at the studio. Ask, just see if you can go and see. If you have to pay, maybe it's a small amount, who knows, I don't know, I've never done that. But B, you could probably also try it out at home, which is really great. And in the comfort of your own home for vocals, I feel like I can be a fool. I can do as many takes as I want. I can, and that goes for every instrument and everything, especially for, guitars or instruments that you can plug right in. And it's not about a miking thing. If it's direct, and you can just record, then you can have the comfort and the ease and that, again, that psychological like calmness to get out the performance that is going to be the best for you, right? And then you can also do your raw recordings, after demo phase and stuff. And you can have certain bits and pieces that then you can outsource and get someone else to edit, to throw all of these sort of effects on, maybe put you through a, what do you call it? Like to fix pitchiness and all of those things. And somebody can do an amazing job just remotely. Oh, sorry, another thing about remote stuff. If you want to add stuff and you want to collaborate, like, people are so used to doing amazing stuff, and you can get some of the most amazing players to just do a remote recording for you for really reasonable pricing. Never be afraid of negotiation, and get them to send you some stuff. Use that as your base, or add that as your final cut to whatever it is that you're doing. I have a friend in Victoria who's a songwriter. He outsources vocals, he outsources strings, he outsources everything. You can just call up Nashville. Some amazing guy in Nashville can do your incredible slide guitar for your song, or whatever it is, so I'm sorry that this is all a stream of consciousness. But hopefully you're getting some information. Yes, ma'am.
I totally agree with what Noreen and Crystal said. You have to know what kind of sound you want. So you are the boss. At the same time, you want to hire somebody who knows more than you do. then you use their wisdom and their experience to help you, to bring you to another step. You want to find somebody who is familiar and knowledgeable to your field, and at the same time has a wider range of the genre. Very few people in the West, or say in Vancouver, that back 20 years ago knew about this instrument behind me, the long zither, how to mic it, how to get the best sound. Not to mention, Red Chamber has 4 different lutes and zithers. They all have different shape, different acoustic nature of that instrument. So find somebody to be able to know all these instruments was not easy. But at the same time, because we're not just playing traditional music, we were creating cross-culture contemporary compositions, and this person also needed to have expertise on those fields. So that is very important. Sorry, Crystal.
No, I love that. I think that's so important. I think roles are also important, to know exactly what everyone's jobs are. Like you had just mentioned, engineer is in charge of capturing a specific kind of sound. They are the person in charge of all of the technical stuff. If they know what they're doing, then you're going to capture something really special. The producer is going to be the guy or the woman who really, actually, was it Noreen that said that there is a website or a documentary about women producers? There's like 5% of producers
Yes.
are women.
Yes.
It's so low.
So
And what was the
documentary? Play Your Gender. Yeah.
Yes, and it's on YouTube, you said, right?
Yeah. It's very eye-opening. Mhm.
Yeah. So, knowledge is power, but just know what the roles are for each person. And when you're hiring or finding or getting recommended, highly recommend a recommendation, a producer, then know exactly what it is that they're being asked or you're asking them to do. I tend to, some producers, if you're more hip hop, R&B, electronic, might just be somebody creating beats or the background music. Another producer, if you're doing a full instrumental album, is the person who's going to choose maybe the very best takes that are going to make the sound So let's say you're Tedeschi Trucks Band. That gentleman is going to be making a very different set of skills come to life, and then say, I don't know, who's an electronic producer? Avicii, rest in peace. You know what I mean? Like, these are very different kinds of music that you have to be aware of what it is that you need when you're in your style of music, and then what you'd like for them to accomplish for you and what their jobs are going to be. So, if you're writing a grant, they want to know who's your engineer. They want to know who's your producer. They want to know who's mixing and who's mastering. And it doesn't have to be the same engineer who recorded who mixes. You can go, oh, and find somebody who you think is amazing to mix it, because guess what? The people who are mixing Erica Badu's albums, Tedeschi Trucks albums, are available. They are for hire, people. And if you dream big and listen to an album and you're like, who produced this? Who mixed this? Read your credits very closely. You can reach out, send an email and say, how much do you charge to mix this album? Might be more than you think, but if you save and get, do some home recording and do, some friend editing, and then you send that to the biggest mixing guy in LA, you might have some real magic on your hands. Don't be afraid to think and dream hugely big and reach for it, because guess what? You have nothing to lose
Right.
by going so far. Like, I didn't think this at all, and then somebody's like, oh, I got my album mixed by the guy who did D'Angelo's album in the 90s or whatever. And it's just, are you kidding me? That's insane, right? So go and reach for the stars, and they can only say no, or I don't have time, or this is too expensive. And if they say it's too expensive, just say, that's not my budget. What else can you do for me?
I'm wondering, when you talk about practice, 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 so that when you get into the studio, which is expensive per hour, that you're not spending a lot of time trying to, try out different takes and so forth. How do you manage to keep your performance in the studio fresh and not, canned sounding?
For me, I think that's a lot of the work of the producer, is to help you get that performance and help you feel comfortable. So I really, as when I'm performing in the studio, I'm really letting the producer guide me. And so I'm trusting his ears. So is he feeling what I'm expressing? And usually we'll talk about that before, but when you're actually performing, and for me that keeps it fresh, because he may guide me in a different way that I hadn't considered until I'm actually performing it. And sometimes we'll try things completely different than how we had actually practiced it. So that keeps it fresh for me, is to be open to maybe new ideas while I'm doing it, rather than getting totally limited in how I'm approaching it. So for me, that's when there's a little bit of spontaneity happening, is when if I know it well enough that I can try it in a different way. And so that's how you know if you're prepared, if you can actually go in a totally different direction. You might not. I mean, you don't have a lot of time, but it gives you some room for that. And I wanted to mention too, you were talking about producers. I mean, when you are doing an album with someone, that's a really big commitment. And what you might want to do is to just maybe hire them to do one or two songs. And then you can get a sense, is this someone I want to invest a lot of money in? Is this someone who gets me, who gets my vision? So I would say to do that as well, because a lot of people will work for a song or two and you get a sense of it. But for keeping it fresh is really, I look to the producer to help me. I find their role is to help bring that out in me. So I don't know about if the other two use that for keeping it fresh.
I think the more you're prepared, the more you can play,
Mhm.
right? The more sort of preparation you have, and the ideas that you have as to what you want to do. You're like, I'm going in there, I'm gonna make this sound like I don't know what. And if you have one, say, obviously your song's already written, you've got your melody line, you've got whatever, maybe you have the ideas for, how you want to make this run happen, or how you want this, like, eventual, like, the harmonies to blend here or something. Think of a second way, in your preparation, during your rehearsal, during the lead up to this, the pre-recording, as they call it, let's call it in the categories of the grant world, have as many sort of like variations to these ideas as you can, and then also be open, like Noreen said, to what your producer has to offer, to what maybe a band member has to offer, or a session player. You never know. Some people, I surround myself with people who know way more about music than I do, and so some people might be like, this kind of harmony here could be really cool, or maybe try that. And yeah, being so prepared that you're then also open to any fastball that's thrown at you could really create magic. So as it's like preparation equals like this amazing openness for not improvisation, but just that additional kind of opportunity for magic to happen. So
Yeah, I also think it depends on what kind of artist you are.
Mhm.
If you are really good at live performance, you're energetic, you have a very hot band, you want to do live, then probably you do live to all recorded together. That could keep your energy high, and certainly that was the case for Red Chamber. We were very hot on stage, but when we were put each in the separated booths and or rooms, or you know, uh, separated by a glass, all of a sudden it felt very different. That energy flow was not the same as on stage. I think there is a choice between playing live or track by track, and to build it up. That how that energy can be kept really depend on individual artists. And
Mhm.
I love to
great
be
point.
able to improv, to have that spark on that spot. But that's the improv albums I recorded with piano with Randy. Then I love them. Even now, go back to listen to these albums, I still feel satisfied. But those track by track and the very tedious on single notes, I feel a little bit dead.
Yeah, live off the floor is an amazing way to keep freshness,
Yeah. Keeps you on
and
your toes.
it, what's that?
It keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right? Like it'll definitely give you a different energy. So I think you have to decide, do you want a super nice, clean, multi-track recording where everything can be isolated and edited later? Or would you like that energy that you can create with your band? It's all very individual.
Yeah.
And it can feel overwhelming to decide upon at first. Like I know I've had very overwhelming moments of like, well, what is it that I want? What sound do I need? But research
Yeah.
research, ask questions, get recommendations. Like it's intimidating, but it's not impossible.
So, Kara has asked, do you need contracts for hiring musicians so that they don't own your song?
For me, I don't sign a contract. It's usually a given as a session player. That's what you're paying them for. You're paying them for that piece of music. So that's sort of just a general agreement that when they come in, you're paying them whatever it is for that session, for their piece and that music, and it's yours. So, but I mean, that would be something if the person you were hiring didn't feel comfortable, then you'd want to get a contract. But with the session players I've worked with, that's just a sort of an industry knowledge that's why you paid them for
Well,
that. If it's an improvisation, whatever, that's the exchange. Yeah.
earlier there was a question about the finance part of recording projects. And for my recordings, most of them I received a Canada Council grant. So when you write a grant, you gave the detailed budget, how much you're going to spend. But when the grant was granted, it's not always the full amount. Usually, it's lower than what you asked for. In terms of producing fee, well, whatever you get, then you do a calculation how much you need for renting the studio, how many days, and how much you need to pay musicians and post production costs and all that. Then you see how much you can afford for a producer. So what I'm saying is, yes, in principle, you can negotiate in anything, producing fee, studio fee, musician fee. Well, there is a union standard minimal, and we don't want to always pay musicians minimal. If you can pay them more, that would be wonderful. But if not, go with the union rate.
And
So-
when I negotiate with a producer, quite often I will negotiate a complete package. So I'm going to say, I can offer you this much and this, and it has to include the musician fees, the mixing, the mastering, your production fees. So we both, we have to agree that this is the budget. This is what has to be. And that's, you want to have that right up front, because you don't want anything surprise.
Right.
And that's, if you're not used to working with the person you're working with, you'd want to get a contract. I had a friend who didn't, and paid the fee, and he was supposed to pay all the musicians, didn't, so ended up her budget doubled because she had to pay the musicians. And so if you don't have a contract, then that can get into some scary times. But generally, some producers, in my experience, they will work for a flat fee or for a whole package, for the whole project fee. So
Can I just quickly interject something really quickly before you ask, Catherine? I don't know who needs to hear this, but find people who will work for you for free and then pay them. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean? Find people, in other words, find people who are truly invested in your project and who want the best for you in the end, because some people are out there just to make a dime. I put a $4,000 deposit on a producer once. I said, you know what, this is not going in the way I wanted it to go. And I lost the entire $4,000, gone. He wouldn't give me half back. He wouldn't give me a quarter of it back. He said, I'll sue you for the rest if you keep bothering me. It can get ugly. Okay, guys. So I'm just saying, like, don't spend your money up front. Keep your cards to yourself to a certain extent, but then also find people who are actually invested in you and the project that you have to do, and then kind of be happy to be able to pay them because they're so invested as well. I know that's not going to apply to everybody, but that's just a real harsh lesson that I've learned along the years. So
yeah, I've had musicians who've come to me and said, I'll play on your album for free. I'll do it. Of course I want to pay them, but that's not uncommon that people will say, hey, I just want to be on the project. I'll do it for the experience. And if you have a simpatico and they're good, then why not? Yeah. Or you can, or I have friends will sit on and they'll do it half price or for really low, because if they know your budget's really small and they want to be part of it. So yeah, absolutely.
What's a demo exactly, as per Noreen making mention?
Sure. A demo is sort of it's a little bit better than a rough recording, but it's not quite a studio recording, but it gives you sort of you do it sort of give instrumentation, arrangement, ideas, or an approach to a song. And quite often songwriters will demo their song, so they won't actually spend thousands of dollars on a expensive studio recording. They might just spend a few $100s so that you can actually hear it with the rhythm section and maybe a couple instruments. So you can it stands for demonstrating. So demonstrating of the song. But sometimes I've done some demo songs that I've ended up putting on albums because I liked how they sounded. So, but usually it's just a rougher, rather than a studio version of the song. But it's at a higher quality than just a rough track. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was also going to say, like, again, from a grant perspective, Factor offers a demo grant of $2,000, and then they have a juried sound recording of, I think, $10,000 for the first time recipients. So it's just like a much more sketchy, stripped down version of sort of the ideas of what you want. Yeah. To then pay a lot of money for the much, maybe more experienced musician or higher quality recording. So.
Thank you. I just wondered what Crystal said about a juried sound recording. Is that what you said?
Yeah, so juried sound recording, basically. I'm not sure exactly how they jury the demo, but the juried sound recording, you have to basically like write your grant, you know, kind of they'll jury you, like they'll send it out to multiple paid jurors who will review your project and see its feasibility, or if they believe in it, or they think the sound is right, or if it's whatever. And they score it out of 100. You need like a specific like score out of 100 in order to get the grant, like 86.7. I've gotten to like 2.4 you know, like points, but didn't get the grant. I've never actually received a factor jury sound recording grant, but there are many others that do the very same thing and give you funding for recording. So that's not the only one. Yes, follow-up question.
Is it possible to find out who these companies or organizations are who give you the funding? I know you mentioned Canada Council, Factor.
Are you in BC?
Yeah.
Yes, there are so many good ones. Look on Music BC's website, musicbc.org or whatever it is. I'm sure Randy has a ton of them. He knows, he's very knowledgeable about grants. And I think he can probably list them, but there's one that just went by, the deadline just ended, but they've been doing them twice a year for the Creative BC Amplify grant. They've been giving 2 streams, established and emerging artists, and the emerging artists get anywhere between 1,000 to 15,000, I think. I could be wrong about this. And then the I think maybe it caps at 10,000 actually. So 1 to 10,000 for emerging. If you're an established artist and they show you different criteria, then it's 1,000 to 35,000. And it's right now, it used to be a 50-50 matching grant. Now it's a 75% grant that they provide, and then you just have to match it with 25%. But there's tons of grants.
And for Factor grant, I don't know if it has changed, but when I applied, I got it, but it's actually a loan you have to pay back.
There's lots of different options out there for grant funding.
I was thinking about recording vocals, and I think it was Noreen who said she generally does 3 takes.
Right.
So I wondered if any of you had experienced the experience of re-recording the vocals, maybe a particular place in a particular song, and doing it, you know, a number of times, and then getting the final product being something where there's a little bit of a delay. It doesn't sound completely smooth, so you almost wish that you just did it all at once, as opposed to stopping and starting and trying to finesse that particular vowel or something.
That would be your recording engineer, and you shouldn't, if they're editing you, they should not have that. That should not be noticeable. So that would be a problem with the recording engineering.
Right.
Because if they can fine tune just a tiny note, and they can make it sound like it's totally blended. So that would be an issue with the recording engineer. Maybe they didn't know how to do it properly if they're editing that. So it should be flowing, or it should not be obvious.
And do you have the situation sometimes where you're paying them, what, 100 an hour or something, that 150 an hour, and it just depends on how many hours you go, and that's the same cost for the recording, the mixing, the mastering, everything?
For me, I work on a project basis, so that's negotiated at the beginning. So we would sort of generally agree, okay, it'd be 10 out, 16 hours for the drums, 10 hours for the vocals. So all of those are agreed ahead of time. And so the producer, when we're recording, he's mindful of that. So he knows, okay, we're spending this much time already. We need to rein it in so that we're staying within budget. So that would be something that they would do, or you would do, depending on how you set that up. So yeah, you wouldn't want, personally, I wouldn't want to work like forever, because you could spend hours and hours on a song, but that's where you want to rein it in. Because at $100 an hour, that can really add up.
Just so we don't lose track of the question thread, I just wanted to go back to Johanna's question to the mentors. Have any of you co-produced your own albums? How do you feel about that? And do you think that's advisable?
I produced one of my albums. I produced the live recording, Noreen Braun and the Mood Swings, and it was great. you have to be comfortable because you're the one that's going to be calling all the shots, and you have to be really clear in what you're hearing. So yeah, I think it's really a great approach to do it if you feel ready and ready to do that. It's a great learning experience to guide everybody and to bring it together. So it's a little different because you're the one with the vision and this and getting the sound. So you're the one doing that.
In order to be able to do that, and first you have to learn a little bit of knowledge of
Yeah.
recording, including mixing and the whole process, mixing and mastering, and learn the tech terms is very important, so you can communicate with the sound technician, with a co-producer. Besides, you know what kind of sound, you also know how to get to what you like, what you need. After several albums, I learned, then gradually gain a little bit of knowledge, gain a little bit insight of what this whole recording art is about. But I also think there is a gender dynamic involved, and we're all women here. I find
Yeah.
that usually men take control and make decision to negotiate the balance and to feel comfortable, to be on the equal footing. That is something I've been working on for decades, and hard to say no, and hard to feel, powerful and strong to say this is what I want, this is what I believe. I think
Yeah.
that is one, as I said, based on your knowledge of what exactly we're talking about on the art form, but also it's about gender dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would completely agree. When I produced, I'd already recorded 3 albums prior. So I had a sense of what happens in the recording studio. And as well, I think it was with my band and I was already the leader. So I had already established that role with all the players were men, but we were already in a place where they were used to taking my lead. So that made it a lot easier too. So absolutely, those are important points I think May made. Yeah.
One question has come in from Mandy. In addition to all of these different sources of funding, is anyone looking at crowdfunding campaigns these days?
I'm releasing my album right now. I'm using a crowdfunding campaign. I'm doing it with my website, Bandzoogle, because you can, and it's a great one because you can control all of it. So I do a lot of pre-sales. I've done that for the past 5 albums. You really should do crowdfunding at some part of your
Sure.
your album, because you're going to have the people who follow you already, and so you've already got those people who are eager. They're going to buy your t-shirts, your CDs, your downloads. So you don't have, it's harder to rely on it because you don't always know how much, especially right now with the pandemic and everything. I've noticed it's a lot slower than I've had for my other albums, but it's still really worth it. And I do things like people can get their name on the liner notes, like for $100. So you get 10 of those, that's $1,000, right? That's a nice chunk. So absolutely, crowdfunding, everyone should do it for their albums. I think it's an extra income. But the only thing about crowdfunding is you have to kind of do it after you've had your project done. But it certainly helps, like with manufacturing costs, promotion, marketing. Definitely look to crowdfunding.
Why do you do that? Like, why do you do the crowdfunding after your product is done?
Because, well, for me, I want to. You don't always have to. I haven't always, but for me, I like to have it done so it's closer to the deadline, and so you can sort of build on that excitement because it's not sort of this dream. It's like, okay, we're finished, we've done the tracks, and now I'm releasing singles while I'm doing the crowdfunding, so it gets people excited too. It's like, oh, hey, this sounds good, I want to be part of this, or I want to get my name on that album. I think it's going to be, so that's why I wait, just because I actually have something rolling already, and it helps me create that momentum. But no, absolutely, you can do it at any time, and I have done it before as a primary source of income for albums. So but now I use it more as a secondary source. I usually put those funds into the marketing promo after. So that's sort of how I kind of see it.
I
Yeah.
guess I have another question, which is I did a EP in Phoenix recently, and it came back with 100 copies. And I wondered if you had any ideas about promotion. Like, I haven't put it out on Facebook or put it out on the net yet. And I thought that's how I would sell it. I have a website. I could maybe, do it that way. But do you have ideas around that? Anybody?
For promoting something that you released a year ago?
I didn't release it.
Oh, you haven't
I
released
brought-
it? Okay.
I haven't released it. I because suddenly in March I was in Phoenix and I had to fly home, and then there was a pandemic, and yeah, I didn't do it yet. I've still got all the CDs here, but they're physically in my house, so I don't quite know. It's harder to have a launch now. So I thought I'd release it on the net somehow.
My experience is nowadays mostly you sell it through distribution online, and especially individual tracks. Very few people now buy actual disc. What you could do is to send different radio stations and to use this to promote, then direct them to the online sale.
When you say online, you mean it on your website?
Your website, but mostly like what my CDs are distributed through a distributor called Orchard. It's one of the biggest world music distributors online. So they would put in many different platforms in social media.
There's also TuneCore, CD Baby. They can do physical distribution as well as digital distribution for you at a really reasonable cost. Like you can release an entire digital album for $69 or something. And then you can also send them. I believe they're based in Portland, so you'd have to mail them your physical copies, but you can send them, say, 20 copies, and that will be another avenue for you to potentially sell your albums physically. So you can, I loved May's idea of sending them to radio stations, because they'll community and college radio stations still probably, I think, I'm not sure, still like to receive the physical copy and then send it, a few of them to a physical distributor to help sell, and then sell some on your website. Just, spread it out.
So how is the record sell right now?
CDs, people don't buy them as much as they used to, but with my demographic, they still do buy CDs. So it's still worthwhile to make them. But it's totally switched over to more downloads. People tend to get their music through downloads now.
Right.
But people, if people have been following you a while, they still like to have the hard copy and see the lyrics and see what you look like, and that tactile thing that you can't get from a download. So, and
mine have gone almost completely downloads, and because we used to sell on stage and festivals, especially weekend festival in summer. That's the biggest.
So even at festivals, they're not buying them. I mean, music is always changing, right? It's always like Spotify. That's that wasn't around like 3-4 years ago. So you kind of have to always flow with how everything changes all the time.
Producer, engineer liked a song I did, asked me to teach it to him. And then after I taught it to him on the guitar, he said, there are no copyrights on anything that people do. And so I'm going to play this out now. And, you don't have copyright on what you wrote.
My understanding is you own copyright upon creation. So as soon as you create it, that's yours. Nobody can take that away from you. However, you can't copyright a title, and you can't copyright chord progressions, because there's millions of songs with the same chord progressions, but your melody and your lyric is yours upon creation.
Yeah, my name is Marianne. I am, as you can hear, I'm British. I'm in the UK, so I'm a singer-songwriter and do kind of, pop, folk, rock kind of genre. So mixed stuff. The professional challenge I'm facing at the moment, I'm struggling to get a good home recording, and feeling like, although I've been writing, feeling unproductive because I haven't been able to have stuff to show people and say, look, I'm still here, I'm still doing stuff. So really maybe having the confidence to get that recording done, or just to get something that I'm happy with. I'm a bit of a perfectionist in that way, so maybe it's just a case of just doing it and just getting something out.
Sometimes just pulling the Band-Aid off is the best way to do it. I think if you're struggling to stay connected, this is sort of not a recording thing, but stay connected with your audience, give them snippets. Go on to Instagram Live and be like, hey guys, I'm working this thing out. What do you think? How do you feel about where I'm going with this? If you already have your nice established set of fans who maybe are already interactive with you, all you need is 2 or 3. You know, I know that sounds like small beans, but 2 or 3 are going to help. 10 is even better. 15 is like exorbitantly awesome. You know, 100, geez, you're probably already a star, right? And so I think pulling that band-aid off and using different avenues to interact with your audience, it gives them you know, what do you call it, breadcrumbs to do that. In terms of home recording, what's your setup like? Are you missing something? Are you feeling like there's a brick wall holding you back from moving forward? You know, figure out what that is. Whether that's just like I don't have the right microphone, you know, or whatever it is. And just, yeah, make yourself a little to-do list or a little sort of like whatever. To-do lists are my favorite thing. And you just kind of work through it. And then those obstacles tend to like fall down real easily when you have it all laid out in front of you to be like, you know what, actually I've got everything I need, you know. I know it's very generic, but hopefully that helps.
No, definitely.
Send it to another person who's doing home recordings and ask them to have a listen and get them to give you some feedback. Because sometimes it's better than what you think it is.
Okay, I might make that list and then send it to another person doing home recordings and see how does this match, or what do you recommend? Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Welcome.
A question I have for the group is how would I figure out what the Canadian and American specs are for mastering for radio in Canada and the US? My friend and I, or a few friends, we produced a few songs, and another friend produced it, and he's got experience in that in New York, but I wasn't really sure, you know, is it at the level? Because we didn't really produce it for a level for just like huge distribution. It was more just not sure what the objective was essentially, but would like to know like how we would be able to figure that out, like if it's mastered and mixed at a professional level.
Whoever's doing your mastering should know that. So they should tell you that it's at the industry standard. If it's whoever's doing the mastering knows that.
He used the word produce, so I don't know if it mastered and produced would be the same.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No. Mastering is part of the step of production, but it's the final step. Something could be produced, but doesn't necessarily be mastered. So if it's been mastered, then usually if it's a professional mastering person, it's done at the industry standard.
Right.
And you could find that by contacting the radio station if you want to know the actual specifics. But
okay.
It's been my experience that whoever masters it knows what the industry standard is, and so they master it according to that.
And just make sure it has to be mastered to what is considered industry standard nowadays, is that you are able to play this in anywhere, different speakers, different machines, different, especially for cars. You know, my first CD, the person who mastered this, well, I'd say mixing this, was a sound engineer who has a very strict philosophy that used to record orchestral music. So there is no compression whatsoever. So when our CD come out and put into a car, it just doesn't jump out.
An engineer once told me that mastering is like the final 5%. And if you're, say, building a wooden table, it's like the sanding, the polishing, and the shellac. Yeah. It basically finishes it so it's nice and ready for your ears. I have used Brock McFarlane from CPS Mastering for my last couple projects, and he's been wonderful. And he's not only like the most friendliest guy, but he knows what he's doing. So you can go back and forth with him and say, you know, I'm finishing this song and I'm really wondering if it's ready for the radio. It's, you know, can you tell me if it's ready? Or If it's not, what would you charge for this one track? And often it's about $95 a track. It's mastering is really reasonable in that sense. And he's very, very generous, at least my experience with working with this particular guy. He's very, very generous with information and with everything. And I mean, everybody is, once you sort of just open up that conversation and that sort of humility and that seeking out of like, you're an expert on this, can you please help? You know, everybody's going to be quite open to helping. So
Cool. Thank
And
you.
it's not uncommon to do mastering more than once on your album too. My last album, I've mastered it 3 times until I got it to where I wanted it. Like the first time, it was exactly as May said. We played it in the car, and it was way too boomy. It sounded great on every other system. In the car, no. So when you do,
yeah, you always have to listen.
Yeah, you want to listen to your music on several different, on your computer, on your iPhone, in your car, on your stereo, and that really gives you a really good sense too. But yeah, so it's not, don't worry if the first mastering isn't where you want it. It's not uncommon to do it a few times.
I'm Johanna. It's nice to meet you all. This is my first time joining in here. I'm a classically trained violinist, and I've been doing live looping sets for several years now, and I've toured with a Celtic folk rock band. So my most recent professional challenge is obviously the fact that I can't tour, but it's given me this time to work on a future solo album. So in that respect, it's like, it's very exciting, but also quite stressful, because it couldn't really be worse timing financially to suddenly not be on tour. Anyway, all of that to say that when we were talking about recording, one thing that came to mind is that in terms of building a solo album, I have all kinds of ideas for multi-instrumental aspects that I might want to add, but oftentimes my brain goes directly to, well, how would I do that live? Even if it's an instrument I can play, but I might not be able to do all of these things at the same time. So kind of asking myself, like, am I building an album that I want to be able to reproduce in a live performance, or am I building an album that I'm just really proud of, but the live version of what's possible with me on my own, maybe a different version of that. If you're familiar with, you know, multi-instrumental artists who loop, like Andrew Bird, people who are playing, you know, multiple things at once, and they're like building this massive setup, and they have, you know, it takes a lot of technology as well. Like, you have to be really tech savvy to kind of figure out the ins and outs of fading and switching tracks. And so all of that to say, that's the biggest challenge I'm kind of facing creatively, is like building that process and asking myself the questions about the album versus the live set. And I guess I would just let you respond to that if you have thoughts on that circumstance.
I think this is a great time to make an album. If I were you, I would do that. And by the way, I watched your video this morning. It's fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it. And not just the audio, also the visual part. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have a home studio?
I do not have a home recording studio right now. I live in a very small apartment in downtown Vancouver. But I do have, you know, the opportunity to practice and rehearse at home, and I've just kind of secured a rehearsal space, like somewhere else I can go. So if I need to rent equipment to make demos, I can definitely do that. And I'm planning on, you know, paying for studio time in the near future. So yeah, the project is definitely in motion.
Definitely look into all the grants that you are eligible to write, and you know, doesn't hurt, nothing to lose. And I was also thinking maybe some of these things, parts, maybe you can find a home or friend's studio to build this, you know, using this time, sort of downtime, You don't have to go to a studio in 1 or 2 days and to get everything done. That can be stressful. So take your
Mhm.
time and use a smaller budget to create
Mhm.
in a period of time.
Thanks.
Yes,
Yeah,
sometimes. Go
follow
ahead.
the path of least resistance too, right? We don't know how long it will be till we can tour again and play live again, but right now is the time to make an album, because that you can do right now. And it's sort of, I think, so you can worry about how will that translate later into live performance, but right now you can do an album. Maybe it won't translate later, but you've still got an album.
Mhm.
That's that too. And like Mandy said, I think she said maybe do both, but start with one.
I think to mirror and echo something that May said before, recording is its own art form. So I think it's up to you. Do you want to capture something that you can do live, or do you want to create a completely different form of art? I personally, for you, would go that route, create your ultimate dream recording, and then you're a very creative, multi-instrumentalist person. You can take and pick and choose whatever you want. And in fact, you can take the actual track from the recording. It's called the TV track, without vocals or without whatever, maybe your violin lead or whatever it is that you don't want in there. You can just play that very track behind what you're doing and loop based on what you've recorded. So it opens up maybe a whole different world for you as well to, loop with a track that's like been your recording or whatever those kind of elements might be. So it's, yeah, the world's your oyster. But I would go for as amazing as possible. Often, when recording, time equals money. And if you have all the time in the world and you can play and take space and, experiment and demo and stuff on your own time, and do it in alternate ways other than going into a big studio, then I think you might get more than what you've ever expected, because you have so much space to create right now.
Mhm.
And one more thing I was going to say, you don't always have to go to the very, very best, highest, studio to get the very, very best sound. Sometimes if you feel more comfortable in sort of I don't want to say lower end, that's the wrong thing to label, but like, if it's just like more of a friend studio or a home studio, or,
Accessible.
just more accessible, maybe you feel more comfortable there, and then your artistry is going to shine that much more if you aren't nervous about money constantly or getting that right take. So take all of that amazingness that COVID has given us lemon wise and make that into lemonade,
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, first off, I would like to say that I am so honored. You guys all inspire me in so many unique and wild and wonderful ways. Thank you for showing up. These days are early, but thank you. My professional challenge, I would have to say right now, is thinking back to last summer. My boyfriend and I, Dane Warren, we did a sold out show at the Hungarian Hall with a big band, and he had the foresight to have it recorded, not just visually, but also the sound, which was a huge feat because it was pretty much 20 some odd people, including Dane and I as the vocalists. So we always do things bass backwards. But we have this recorded live show with like a full experience of like the dancers and the energy and everything, which I really hold on to in those times where I'm like, not performing to a live audience, not having that visual of the dancers and, that whole thing. But what can we do with that recording? It's all, big band tunes. These are all covers of Great American Songbook tunes. Maybe the oldest ones from like the 20s, but I don't even think that's like public domain.
No.
I'm wondering if
I was going to say,
there's,
determine which ones are public domain and which ones aren't. And then, yeah, anyways, go on.
how would I do that?
How would you determine which ones are public domain and which ones aren't?
Google.
Google.
Yeah. Or the CMRRA will have them listed too. That to license mechanical rights here in Canada. They will.
Okay.
So if
you
none
put
of
your
them,
name in, yeah.
yes, to add to Noreen, sorry to interrupt. You can absolutely press and perform those kinds of songs. Like, let's say, from when you said that, first off, I'm like, okay, well, if it's multi-track, or even if it's not and it's nice and balanced and you like it, you know, put it as a digital album, or press a couple copies, or use it on your website as an example of what you guys do and sound like. CMRA will give you all the opportunity. It's the, what does that stand for? The Canadian
Mechanical rights, and I don't know what the other R is.
royalties.
Royalty.
Royalties, maybe.
Maybe,
Yeah.
yeah.
Rights and
Association.
Royalties Association.
So they are the ones who say, like, if you press a physical CD and you want to make 1,000 copies, each copy of each song is going to cost you, I think, 8 cents per song per copy. So let's say you have 10 songs, that's 80 cents times 1,000 copies, that's whatever it is, $80, you know?
Right.
And that's what you'll have to pay in order to press it, just for that small run. Digitally, I have no idea. You're gonna have to figure it out. But yeah, figure out, because
actually, when you do it digitally, it's already whoever distributed it.
it's automatic.
It's automatic.
Yay. Right. But for example, I'm doing, well, I just did, we did our world premiere of a show called Hey Viola, and I just did a grant to see if we could get a soundtrack made. But out of the 15 songs, 6
Right.
of them are public domain, and 9 of them are, you know, still belong to
Out
people,
there,
published. Right. Exactly. So, you know, we're having to figure that out. But if you're doing it digitally, as Noreen said, it'll be figured out. But I would put that together as a package and say, live from blank. You know, people love live recordings.
Well,
And
and
if
all
you had,
these venues in town, you know, like we have a couple, yeah, like all these venues need support, financial support too, right? So I was like, we probably couldn't get it done for Christmas, but like possibly something in the new year as like a give back to the community, because yeah, these venues, man, they're disappearing and it's so disheartening. But
if it's multi-track, you can also get it mixed, right? So
it
like
was,
if you have multiple,
I believe, Dane, was it multi-track? I believe so.
Yeah. So you
there was
can
a
send that to,
gargantuan machine there.
exactly. You can send that to a mixing engineer and get them to do some nice levels on it. You can get it mastered. You can get it really ready, and you can get that live recording, you know, almost next level done. It doesn't just have to be the raw recording. So those are
When
some
we
options.
listen to it back, like it's so heartwarming because you have that audience interaction, which, you know, missing these days, performing to cameras and all the who's it and what's it. But yeah, it's so great to hear the audience like hooting and hollering and being ridiculous and catcalling and, you know, like that live visceral stuff that, you know, keeps you kind of going when you're like having a tough time.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you,
Put
ladies.
it out there.
I'm trying. Thank you.
You could also do like a YouTube premiere too, right? Like do a live event YouTube premiere. Say, hey, remember when we could play live?
Yeah. When we could dance.
Totally.
Yeah.
Shake hands.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool beans. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you again for having me be a guest mentor. It was great to meet all the other mentors and all the participants, and I'm excited to hear your work in the future when it's out there and for the world to hear. And so thank you for that. Thank you for having me. What I'd like for you to take away, I hope, is to have a real sense of vision of what it is you want to put out into the world for your project. If you're doing a recording, just really get clear on what is it, how do you want it to sound, how do you want it to be, and have a plan. Know what are the steps that have to follow. Know what your budget is. Are you going to do this with or without funding? Those things really are good to know. I mean, a lot of times I'll make an album whether or not I'm going to get funding. I know that, so makes it really clear for me. I know why you're making this. Who's your audience? Are you getting this to radio? That's all part of your planning and your vision. Have a producer, people that believe in your music. You want to make sure that whoever you're working with really believes in who you are and your vision, whether it's the session players or your band or anybody that you're really try and find that person or persons who believe in your work. That makes it a lot easier. Be prepared. Know your music when you're ready to record it. And know that it's a process. You really want to enjoy the process of recording. A lot of people just want the finished product, but it takes months to get to that, maybe years sometimes, depending on what kind of recording you're doing. So learn to enjoy it, learn to appreciate it, and it will really help you create some of your best work ever. So vision, be prepared, be with people who believe in you, and enjoy the process. And that's my key. So thank you.
I think a good artist is constantly growing and developing as yourself, as a person, and also the art you create. So just proud of yourself and ground on where you are today. And at the same time, plan ahead, always step ahead. So you will be always on that road to success, and you are successful. And I'm so glad you joined us today, and you all have already achieved quite a lot. Just be proud of yourself. Thank you.
I had a thought and then it just totally went out of my head. So to summarize, it was something, yeah, I know, right? It was something that you had said that maybe it'll come back as I continue to talk, but I'll try and keep it nice and short. Trust yourself, know what you want. To go on to Noreen's advice, which, oh my God, yes to everything. Preparation, knowledge. Ask as many questions as you can before you ever spend a dime. Yeah, it's a beautiful process, and just take it slow. There's no rush. What was I going to say about May? What were you saying? Can you remind me again what you were talking about? Because I really do want to say what.
I was just saying, as an artist, you grow, you constantly change. That's natural. And just be who you are.
Yes.
And ground
Sit.
where you are today.
Yes. And I oh my God, I love that so much. All that reminds me now is that recordings are snapshots in time. Recordings are snapshots in time of how wonderful and amazing you are in that moment. It doesn't have to be, as May was saying, your future best self, or remember when I used to be able to, who cares? It is a perfect snapshot of a memory, of a time, of an experience. I was in the studio recording vocals 6 days after I gave birth. I will never forget that. And, these are moments that you can treasure because they're captured in a recording. So know that when you're putting your stuff onto tape or digital or whatever, that nothing's perfect. And this is just a capture of a moment.
Thank you so much to Noreen for joining us this session, and to returning mentors May and Crystal. Always a pleasure to host events with you. I'd like to take the time again to thank all our participants for joining in. Thanks for coming in and posing the questions. Very thoughtful and great discussion. And thanks to our sponsors, Creative BC, the province of British Columbia, and the Red Chamber Cultural Society. In November, our final workshop of the year on November 28th, and that's going to be called Keeping My Head and Heart, the Art of Being an Artist. And we're pleased to invite guest mentor Sherry Ulrich. Deirdre Morgan is returning, and Crystal, you'll be back. So guest mentor Sherry Ulrich joins Emergence Mentors to talk about the emotional impacts of being an artist, the issues of artist angst, rejection, post-tour depression, solitude, and other powerful emotions are going to be talked about openly. And some methods and techniques of managing those emotions to reach a positive and balanced attitude for achieving fulfillment as a working artist will also be included. Just a reminder too that we also have a meetup.com group, again, the Facebook mentorship group, a YouTube channel, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you go to emergencebc.org, you'll see links to all of those different social media channels. So thanks again.